Thomas O'Rourke for Pacifica Radio's Capitalism, Race, and Democracy. I'm speaking today to Guillermo Kane, an Argentine politician and provincial deputy from Buenos Aires region, and an activist member of the Partido Obrero, Workers' Party, which itself formed part of the electoral coalition Frente de Izquierda Unidad, United Left Front. Welcome, Senor Kane. Thank you for joining me. Could you please describe your background as a political figure in Buenos Aires and nationally in Argentina?
Hi, pleased to meet you. Hello to anyone who's listening. Well, I've been a militant since I was a teenager in the Partido Obrero, the Workers' Party, which is a Trotskyist party, a socialist revolutionary party in Argentina. I started militating in high school in the student movement, and then since about the year 2000, I became involved in the organization of unemployed workers, what's called the Piquetero movement, for the pickets, the roadblocks, which are the direct action form of struggle, which has characterized this mass movement, which has continued organized over time. I am a founding member of the Polo Obrero, which is the unemployed workers organization linked to the Partido Obrero in the most populous sector of the province of Buenos Aires and the country, one of the most massive, poorest working class districts in the greater Buenos Aires area, which is called La Matanza.
This Javier Melie has called himself an anarcho-capitalist and a libertarian. Others have referred to him as an Argentine Trump-like figure. Others call him a fascist or even a neo-fascist, which usually goes undefined as far as I can see. What is your assessment of Milei as a political figure and phenomenon? And please explain why you believe he won the presidential runoff 2 weeks ago.
Well, he's definitely a part of the global ultra-right or far-right, which effectively has links of political influence and solidarity with Trump, Bolsonaro, Vox, Giorgia Meloni, and so on. And so this is a matter of fact. He is an admirer of Trump. He has invited Trump to and Bolsonaro both to be present, for example, when he takes power this month, takes presidency. So this is a matter of public record. And he is the Argentine expression of these ultra-right electoral forces that have been popping up in the world, and I think with all the differences that they have, both ideological and because of the differences of the countries themselves, which are several, which we can talk about. I think they have in common they are exploiting electorally the failure of democratic bourgeois so-called progressive governments, and they are able to make an important political agitation of a profoundly reactionary character, saying that we need to go against workers' rights, we need to go against women's rights, those of sexual minorities, etc. So a profoundly reactionary so-called solution where the governments who have paid lip service to progressive demands, but who are in reality governments of concentrated capital, and who have been enemies of the working class, and under whose governments, as with Kirchnerismo in Argentina, as with Lula in Brazil, as with Obama and the like, and now Biden in the States, we have profound poverty, precarization of labor, disorganization of the working class, and attacks against its right to unionize and so forth. And in this way, these sorts of ultra rights have been able to exploit electorally these realities. This has not led to a solution or even stable governments, as we see with Trump and Bolsonaro, who have not at least been able to get reelected, to go more than one term, and who have had very severe political crisis. In Latin America in general, we've been having a period of very sharp twists with a lot of right and so-called left bourgeois governments who are not able to get reelected or often even finish one term in government. So we see the election of Milei as having a direct relation to the collapse, the political collapse of Peronism, and in particular its latter-day incarnation in Kirchnerismo, who have lost millions of votes between the last election and this one, and where Milei has been able to exploit the idea that this has something to do with leftism, while Kirchnerismo and Peronismo are a bourgeois nationalist formation that have absolutely nothing to do with socialism, but in the political agitation and the presentation in the media, this so-called pink wave of Latin American governments is presented as leftist. And it is true, part of the left has supported them, and part of the left has a political confusion between socialism and statism, which is exploited by these right-wing parties. So I think it's a complex issue, but let's say we could try to sum it up saying Milei has had backing from important capitalist sectors to try to channel the anger against the growing inflation. It's not a hyperinflation yet, but it's getting there. The destruction of wages in Argentina, the structural poverty, over half the population is poor. And he has had a lot of media space and a lot of financial backing. So an ultra-right sector which proposes measures that are compatible with capitalism and that are favorable to the bosses receives and channels this anger. Even Peronism itself favored Milei, gave it the political party it used to go to elections, gave it candidates, gave it financing, and gave it and cared for those ballots at the election places, which is something that's important because of how the election process is organized in Argentina. So it gave it its apparatus to go to elections as part of a gambit to divide the votes with the more traditional conservative right-wing opposition and to try to stay in power. This is how they were this is how they were able to retain the government of the province of Buenos Aires, which is one of the local governments that Peronism has been able to retain. But it backfired on them because this idea that they were promoting a candidate that was so far right-wing and so far from sort of mainstream traditional positions that he was going to be able to be weaponized as a boogeyman to win the runoff, finally worked against them. And the hatred for the Peronist government was stronger than the fear of the extremist positions of Milei. They lost by over 12% of the vote. So it's a very sizable defeat.
The centrist coalition lost to Milei by 12%, you're saying?
Yeah, the Peronist coalition. Yeah. So that's the most dynamic. The clearest thing is the collapse of Peronism. Milei has been able to gather a lot of votes in the runoff, but of course, most of those, or almost half of those people, didn't vote for him in the general elections. And his party is very small in the sense of it doesn't have much parliamentary positions, neither in the Senate nor in the National Congressman. It has no local government, neither on the provincial nor on the city level. It is trying to now put together a coalition around it with the Macri, the ex-president Macri of the more traditional right-wing opposition, and some sectors of Peronism. It is completely changing its political positions from what it campaigned on, where it talked about dollarization of the economy and shutting down the central bank. It is now announcing for its cabinet people who have already been part of the Macri government and even who have been part of the Cristina Kirchner government. And they're talking about taking on massive amounts of debt from the IMF. They've just been in Washington this week trying to get amounts of debt, with actually the same people who were government officials with the Macri debt that Milei said was a crime against the Argentine people and that he was against foreign debt because it was stealing from the people and demagogic things like that. So what we really think we have is a period of political crisis where a government which has a minority of the political structure is putting together a very unstable coalition and trying to and is going to use it for a very direct attack, a very strong attack against the masses in a moment where, though we're not at the strongest moment of mobilization of the working class, the Argentine working class has not been defeated. It has many labor conditions and organizations to defend, and in this sense, it is likely that we're going for a moment of very sharp clashes in the class struggle in Argentina.
You hinted that Milei is Trump-like in his rhetoric. Trump, you remember, used this slogan, "Make America Great Again." Does Milei say anything comparable, and what epoch does he hearken back to in terms of making Argentina great again? Is it the pre-war II? Is it the Peronist period when, of course, statism arose? And this is the welfare state he is fighting against, it seems like, ideologically, and wants to destroy. Whether he has the guns to do it remains to be seen.
You're going to the crux of it, very, very, very sharp. He has said, "Make Argentina great again," and tried to lampoon that Trump. It's different, of course. U.S. is an imperialist country, and Argentina is a semi-colony, mainly of U.S. imperialism. In that sense, far from a nationalist and sort of protectionist stance that Trump posits, and that has actually been favored and talked well of in different moments by Cristina Kirchner and Peronist leaders, Milei, to the opposite, it is a very free market, and he says he's a fan of the U.S. and Israel, and that we have to break ties with countries who have ideological stances that he calls communists, like China and Brazil, and it is against joining the BRICS. So it is very much the idea of favoring privatizations and being a direct colony. For example, fully privatizing the oil company, the national semi-private oil company, which is YPF, etc. The period he hearkens to is the liberal conservative 1880 to 1916 period, where Argentina was called I don't know how to translate it. The grain supplier of the world.
Yeah. And British capital was all over the place, right?
Yeah, we were a British colony in all aspects except directly being part of the British Empire. And it was a moment, for example, where there was not general election rights, but very, very restricted election rights, and where electoral fraud and a pretty direct government of British capital and the local oligarchy and aristocratical sectors were what dominated the country. So, of course, this version of history is completely false. Argentina was not one of the rising powers of the world in the late 19th century. It was a colony, but he says it was considered one of the great economical powers, and then state interventionism did not let it fulfill this destiny. This is his rhetoric.
Okay, let me ask you this.
Of course, it is linked with the idea of bitcoins and deregulation, and the idea that there's a whole possibility of modern economic movement that's being hindered by state interventionism and so on.
Could you briefly describe the state of the Argentine economy, including the conditions and prospects for the Argentine working class? You said earlier they were by no means broken. And also include in your answer some discussion of the labor leadership of the unions and how they've contributed to either the struggle against reaction or undermined that struggle?
Again, the topic is ambitious, but we'll try to be brief. Inflation is very, very high. We'll see how much it rounds off the year, but it's going to be above 150.
150% a year?
150% a year.
150%, yes. Okay. That's incredible.
While and this is linked to the devaluation of the peso and a situation where the dollar is not directly convertible to the peso, or at least the rates in which it is convertible are varied. At the moment, there were over 20 different values of the dollar, depending on for what use this is, which is, as the dollar is still the reference point of the economy, is something that is maddening all economic life, from the industry to being able to rent a house, to what the prices are at the supermarket. Everything is distorted and driven crazy by this constant devaluation of the peso, and the fact that it is still the reference point of an economy that is very much centered around the exportation of particularly soy, other agricultural products, oil, and mining and different minerals. For example, there's a boom of lithium now. So it's the whole economy is centered around getting dollars, but then the way those dollars factor into the local economy is part of a very strong inter-bourgeois struggle between the state that wants to use it to pay the very high foreign debt and the different private sectors and for example, the industry that wants to still be protected and be able to use those dollars for supplies and so on, because the state is, and the IMF supports the Argentine state, getting all dollars that come from exportation and controlling them as a means to pay the foreign debt, and only giving them even to companies that are exporting through indirect and, let's say, after some time, like it's just, it's not a direct economic movement. So this is the situation. The Argentine working class is very divided. Some sectors of the unions, even of the unionized working class, even though they have been losing wages, have also been able to more or less follow inflation. Other sectors, even of the unionized working class, but particularly of those sectors in precarious labors, outside union contracts through, for example, new platforms, Uber and so on, and a very large sector of sub-employed workers outside the traditional labor market are in conditions that are far below the poverty and the extreme poverty line. So what we have is a very high fragmentation of the Argentine working class along those lines, where the official unemployment levels are not too high. They're supposedly under the 10% line, though this is somewhat falsified because it does not include people receiving some form of government subsidies and so on that aren't really employed or fully employed. The reality is that more than ever, a large part of the employed working class, even in unionized sectors, is below the poverty line. So this is the general situation. There is a big consensus among the Argentine bourgeoisie and the foreign bourgeoisie that acts in Argentina that it is necessary to change the economic epoch, so to speak, to sort of leave state subsidization of the price of energy and other public transportation and other public services, which is an indirect way of trying to cheapen labor in Argentina that has been an exercise for many years, but has a strong fiscal price in the way it is executed, to sort of open up the economy to the dollar, which is what they promised to do, and to leave this the control of foreign currency, the state control of foreign currency. But the way to do that, and which of the capitalist sectors are going to pay for this, is up for a very a strong discussion and fight, which is still open and which has dominated the very difficult electoral process with much infighting and zigzags in this long electoral year, and which has not been resolved by the election, but is part of the battle for posts on the cabinet of a candidate who's gotten the majority of votes but doesn't have a party and is out meeting with all the political and economic sectors of Argentina and of imperialism to see what his economic and political plans are going to be, what his government is going to be, which is a week from him assuming the presidency is still not clear. On the problem of the unions, so I don't know if that answers, but as far as before the unions, maybe what the financial outlook is, Milei himself has said that even if all goes according to his plans, we're going for a period of serious stagflation, that he does not foresee inflation going down before June of this or December of next year, and that he thinks that the annual inflation for next year is going to be at least 200%. So whatever his plans are when he takes office, there's probably going to be a strong devaluation of the official rate of the dollar, at least doubling its current rate, which is going to have very high inflationary results. He's also calling for privatization and closure of many public offices, different public services of the state. He's talking about privatizing the national TV channel, the national radio, the national news agency, the national airline, the national oil company, and so on. And
hasn't that been an ongoing campaign by the Argentine state and bourgeoisie since at least Macri, the privatization impetus?
Yeah, but Macri, who is at this moment negotiating a sort of coalition with Milei, said that he opposition to his policies during his government and the way he tried to implement them did not let him go far enough. Well, the reality is actually there was a strong working class struggle against Macri, where hundreds of thousands took to the streets and clashed with the police, and during his first. He won the parliamentary elections and said he was going to do like 7 reforms, labor reform, pension reform, fiscal reform, and so on. And the first one he tried to pass was the pension reform in December 2017, and this was the mass struggle with about 400,000 people near here in the Congreso, the National Congress, and the square before it. On the 14th, and then again on the 18th of December of that year, we had a comrade of our party. It has a confirmed prison term hanging over his head for being part of those demonstrations. Cesar Aracaki. We want to take advantage to demand his freedom and to promote the campaign, so he does not serve effective jail time. But was actually a demonstration attacked by the police. But after these mass clashes, Macri had to table those reforms, for example. So it is very much a situation where, as you said, one thing is to say that you will do all these things, and one thing is what the outcome of the class struggle will be in a country where even after the military dictatorship that killed 30,000 people, they have not been able to advance in the privatization of the university, for example. The University of Buenos Aires in particular, and in general, the public university system of Argentina has a free and direct access to higher education that does not exist in the region. The same is true of the health services. Of course, these suffer from cutbacks from the governments and have a lot of financial problems, but it is also true that they exist as the result of the class struggle in Argentina and the defense that the labor movement, sectors of the left, and so on have had over many years. So yes, advances and setbacks have existed with privatizations since Macri, since Menem in the 90s, who actually privatized a lot of these things, and then they were nationalized when they entered crisis. But okay, so that on the one hand, and then the unions. The unions have been in a profound alliance with the Alberto Fernandez government, a government that has impoverished and indebted the population to an extent where we have hardly seen him make public statements in the last year. The president, not only has he not run for re-election, he's practically hidden from sight. He has announced that he will go live in Spain next week when he gives up the presidency. And the presidential candidate of that sector, it says he's going to work for financial companies in the United States. Several, so they're leaving the country just to have an idea of where their popularity is at. And the unions have been very closely allied and have been the main resource in demobilizing in these years. There have been sharp struggles, but either against the union leaderships or outside of the unions or from the unemployed workers organization. There have also been important environmental and women's struggles in these years, though some of those sectors, both of social and unemployed organizations and of the women's and environmentalist organizations, have also been co-opted by the Peronist government, which received support from much of the traditional left in Argentina, Stalinist, Chavista, Maoists, center-left, and so on.
Well, thank you.
They have very much been part of this Peronist regime that has come to its downfall. With the upcoming Milei government, most of these sectors of the trade union bureaucracy are openly collaborationist and are doing nothing against the layoffs that are already started in sectors of the private industry in light of the recession, which looks to be even more severe. And there are, to contrast with this, positions of the revolutionary left and anti-bureaucratic sectors. For example, the industry of tires for cars is led by our party, the national union, the SUTNA, which is the union of tire manufacturers. And in 2022, they led a 6-month conflict, which they managed to achieve a labor contract, which is the only one in Argentina, which automatically indexes the wages in that industry to inflation, which they again achieved in the contract this year. So there are definitely important positions of the left and anti-bureaucratic sectors within the unions, but the union confederations, which are very divided, there's both within the CGT, the CGT, the traditional Peronist union, and the CTA, which is split into 3 different sectors now, which was the competing center-left trade federation, but which has been absorbed by Kirchnerismo over time. So basically that's...
Okay, thank you very much.
We're definitely calling for unions to be a center of working class resistance against the new government. Our unemployed workers, main unemployed workers leader, Eduardo Beliboni, has made national headlines this week, because while traditional politicians and union bureaucrats are saying that Milei is a democratically elected government and we have to support him and we hope he does well, Beliboni said, we want the failure of the Milei government because he is coming up against workers. He wants to destroy our labor rights. We are going to face up against him, and we're going to favor the stability of a government of enemies of the working class. So just this week, 2 PO leaders have been under very sharp fire from the state. One has been Beliboni for making these statements, and for example, La Nación, the main one of the most important newspapers of the country, and the one traditionally linked to the aristocratic right, said that our comrade of the Pueblo Obrero, of the unemployed workers, is the main opposition of Milei, while the bureaucrats and the bourgeois Peronist opposition have all been making democratic statements and even active collaboration with the government. And another comrade of ours, who was our candidate for head of government of the city of Buenos Aires, Vanina Biasi, and will rotate as a congresswoman next year, has been under campaign by Zionism because of our positions against the massacre of the Palestinian people in Israel. And a national DA has just called her to be processed for what they call religious discrimination, which is actually the denunciation of Zionism. So we are very much in a moment where the voices of the PO in particular and the revolutionary left are the only voices against the bourgeois consensus that they're trying to put together around the new government.
Well, thank you for that a very comprehensive answer, Guillermo. I'm unfortunately running out of time, but it sounds like my last question is it sounds like you're hopeful for the working class of Argentina in the near future, and that but you also see that this period will present heightened opportunities for struggle, which means, heightened risk, heightened danger, etc. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah. I think you got the gist of it.
And do you feel your party is preparing the working classes for this future struggle?
That's what we put our energy into every day. We have arrived at this moment with important forces in the unemployed workers, in strategic unions, with an important youth sector, with a history of participating in the women's struggle, which has been very important in Argentina, and with a public place as a revolutionary left position through this decade of work with the United Left Front. So we do think it is going to be a huge challenge. We think there are going to be very important clashes in the class struggle, and we will give it our all. And of course, we are not alone. We think the working class and the left internationally is in a difficult situation, but we are happy to see the mass demonstrations against the massacre in the United States, in Europe, and elsewhere. And we think in the need for a new revolutionary international, for an international solidarity, the working class in Argentina and the world can have strength in the unity against the bourgeois oppressors in Argentina and elsewhere.
Thank you very much, Guillermo. I have to leave it at there. This is Thomas O'Rourke for Pacifica Radio. I've been speaking to Guillermo Kane, Argentine politician, provincial deputy from the Buenos Aires region.